Welcome to the Map Deck podcast. My name's Paul. This is Jake. We are fresh from the workshop once again, dirty clothes and everything as usual. One day we'll sort that out. We've got some interesting subjects today. One, we want to talk about the it's made in China anyway, and some information that Hambini has just put out. We're not going to steal his thunder too much, but we've got some stuff here we were burning to talk about. We're also going to talk about that new Campagnolo Groupset and the weirdness about it. And of course, we're going to throw out some congratulatory words about the new Round the World effort. And also, we've seen some sleek spy shots of some mechanical group sets, building on from our last podcast when we were complaining about the lack of entry-level stuff. Yeah. So, interesting one, I think, today.
Yeah, I'm keen to get stuck in.
Now, the reason I brought this into the workshop and showed it to you is because we see a lot of bikes. So far this year, we've seen about 2,500 bikes come through I know, it's mad, isn't it?
Yeah, sounds like quite a lot.
It's quite a lot of bikes. We deal mostly in road and mostly with carbon, and people bring us all sorts of stuff. So we've got eyes on quite a lot of this, I think. And also, we're in that position where people email us, factory owners email us, so will you review this for us and give us some sort of insight as to the quality level that we're going to expect from those bikes that are offered for review. And we also deal with a lot of problems. And this is the first time though that I've seen it detailed like this. So what this document is a list of all the various parts of a frame and then a quality level next to it and how much that might cost. Yeah. So we've got a base spec,
it's a little shopping list, isn't it?
Yeah, the idea is if you were the owner of a brand, let's say Dolan or Ribble or something like that, and you went out to a factory and you were specifying a bike, the factory would say, we can do this for this much money, or we can do a better quality for this much money, or even a better quality for this much money. And there's quite a lot of twists and turns in all of this. So, and it was interesting to see it all laid out like this, because it's not a clear cut, oh, I want a medium quality thing. You can literally choose the quality of the frame material, and then but the geometry checks or the QC you might skimp on, etc. And you can build up something. The interesting thing for me is that if I was in that position, I'd also be thinking, well, import duties. If you import something which is a part of a bicycle, it's cheaper than importing an entire ready-to-sell bicycle. Yeah. You've obviously got that thing that we see a lot in the UK is if you add 50% of the value to a bicycle in the UK, you can essentially say it as a UK brand. Which
there's a few frames that we're friendly with that say made in the UK, which is debatable.
Yeah, 50% of the value is added in the UK, which does put into question how
valuable the paint job is.
How valuable the paint job is. And sometimes they did a terrible job of it anyway, and it would have been better off being done in China. Absolutely. So with all that in mind, I would be looking through this, and I was trying to assign brands to some of these boxes as to what we can see. And the frame material was sort of the first one. The idea is you have a Z11, a Z7, and a Z3, and the base spec, the cheapest one, is a low modulus carbon, some fiberglass mix in there as well.
Oh no, not the elves debacle coming back to bite us again.
Yeah, and bladder internals. Now, bladder internals is normally when they put a plastic bag in, they inflate the plastic bag, and the plastic bag on the inside adds some resistance so they can compact the carbon. What we find as mechanics is that those plastic bags do one of two things. They create crevices and tent in and stuff like that. So when we're trying to do internal rotation,
makes it such a pain, doesn't it?
And sometimes just leave the debris of the bags in there, because imagine it heats up, doesn't it? And it all crimples and it turns into like crisp packet type material. And you're there trying to fish it all out before you can get a cable in. So there's still a few bikes out there. I'd say probably what I described as quite premium.
That
are still in that.
Well, premium in price, certainly.
Premium price, yeah. It really gives, I think, people an idea of what to look for. I haven't seen many bikes recently with a lot of fiberglass. We used to see it quite a lot in the old Cannondales and bits and pieces where the inside of the fork was white. Yeah. I have to say, I can't think I've seen one of them recently. Have you?
Not off the top of my head, but again, I would have thought also over time the white sort of
might just turn to black and dirt. Yeah, maybe.
So I would say it's something that if you don't have eyes on kind of new frames, it's a tricky one to work out, because most of the new frames that we see are pretty high end and actually are made in their own factories rather than outsourced.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, even the Sonelli, Tifosi type stuff that we see, I still think they're not using that so much. It's definitely haven't seen that so much. Right at the very top of this is the high modulus carbon, the foam EPS internals, mandrel aligned bottom bracket. And what that means is they had to literally have a 41mm block of steel that they insert, so there's no way that they can get the alignment wrong. And they put that 4 times the price. It's no wonder we don't get a aligned bottom bracket if it costs 4 times as much to stick a steel mandrel through the frame.
I mean, that's what worries me the most, because if we're seeing like a £4,000 frame that's not even on the full price, because they still come with misaligned bottom brackets all the time. So what sort of margin are they making?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think Z7 probably seems to be the most popular out of all of that. The sometimes a fiberglass mix in the fork and bladder internals. Z7 definitely seems to be the most popular.
Yeah.
It's very rare that I think we'll see a Z3 spec on that mandrel aligned out of a Chinese factory. Obviously we know that Time and stuff do it. Look have now moved to a threaded bottom bracket anyway, etc. But I really can't think of anyone that's doing a Z3, even Colnago.
I have a question for you. Where do you think the Tay Velo strikes on this list? I know we've not seen one in the building yet, but hot topic on YouTube at the minute is the Tay Velo Arrow. Where do you think that lines up on the graph?
I think it's probably a Z7. I think I honestly don't think there's much of the low quality stuff out there anymore. I really don't. I think most people are
from sort of named brands at least.
Yeah, unless you're picking up something like really cheap, unbranded Trifox off eBay or something. I think if anyone's proud enough to send their bike to a YouTuber, it's probably going to be that Z7 or above.
Yeah. What did surprise me about this was the kind of geometry checks and the QC checks that they have. Is that obviously on the bottom one, none at all. Zero. Nothing.
For the cheapest price, we don't check anything.
We don't check anything. It gets thrown in a box or thrown in a skip. There's just nothing. There's nothing going on. But on the Z7 mid spec, every 50th frame, that does not sound like a whole lot to me.
It doesn't actually. I don't know the sort of the quantity that someone like Ribble and Dolan etc. would buy. Maybe 500 at a time or something. So it's not a very high.
It's not, is it?
A high percentage, isn't it? And I can see, but all they do is just check the geometry. They literally just go, are the dropouts in the right place, etc. They're not really checking any actual alignment and stuff. It's not until you get right up to the top of the range where it's every 5th frame is jig checked. The bottom bracket, headset, seat post, fork stays and checked on every frame. It's not until you get up to 4 times the price that someone is actually checking every frame. Yeah,
it's pretty scary, isn't it?
I
think you're basically, most frames are just the machine is left to do its job and it just comes out the door.
It does, and I think that's why we're so busy doing this stuff, because that's not being done at all. I can see why. Even the very top brands, if you jump in from every 50 frame just a basic jig check, okay, fair enough.
Does it line up?
If it's come out of a mold, it probably is going to be okay.
Yeah.
But what's really important to us is the mounting points, the bits we actually bolt components onto.
Yeah.
That doesn't get checked until you're right up at 4 times the value.
Yeah.
It's no wonder we're so busy. And I think what you would be doing if you were the owner of a brand is assuming that, oh, it's okay, my mechanics will check that when they're building the bike.
But obviously the mechanic in the factory is then under pressure to knock out 10, 15, 20, however many bikes a day.
Yeah.
You haven't got time for that.
No, and we see, don't we? We see brand new bikes where none of that has been checked.
No,
even
not at all.
Even as a mechanic seems to have been inserting a bottom bracket or bolted onto a brake caliper, that must be looking at big blobs of paint and going, nah, I'm ignoring that. Turn it. It's incredible. So I just wonder where sometimes there'll be those conversations with the factory. They'll be thinking, oh, it's okay, no, we'll do that internally because we've got mechanics on the ground. They'll do the internal checking. I don't need to add that to the cost, thanks. But then it doesn't get done. It's such a shame. The other thing for me was the things like the painting and the sort of the post-manufacture, the drilling, the bits and pieces. So on the post-manufacturing and the painting, just none. There's no finishing, no nothing. It comes out of the mold, you ship it. I can see that's quite an appealing prospect if you're the Dolans, Ribbles of the world, where it's like, well, okay, I've got someone who's going to in the UK that's going to paint it. They're going to mask it off anyway. We'll do the quality checks, etc. And they get shipped off. But that's where we see probably most of our complaints with those brands isn't in is the carbon strong enough?
Well, that is also an issue, but that's probably a conversation for another day.
Yeah, there was that one Dolan, wasn't it? It was like loose threads everywhere, like no resin on it, and also, held together with paint.
Not to rag on Ribble as much as I love to, but I know 3 people that have cracked them without crashing them.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, but
it's such a hard thing to argue in the comments, though, isn't it? And with people, because you know, everything's made in China is the whole point. Is that all the top brands are made in China, and the top brands suffer breakages as well.
Well, it's where the expertise is as well, isn't it? Because if you think that's where everything gets made, that's where that's where
the expertise, and basically what this document is telling us, that the Chinese will do it for you if you pay them to do it.
Yeah.
It's essentially it. And if you're not going to pay them to do it, then you better have some robust systems in your own factories in wherever you are to finish it all off. So yeah, the post manufacturing bit, the standard drilling, which is just, you know, run a drill bit through it, bottom brackets, headset landings, brake mountings are minimally finished.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone really specs that, or they go straight to the Z3, which is the 3-stage drilling. Now, 3-stage drilling is you normally drill a pilot hole, then you do the actual hole itself, and then you go back and chamfer the edges, etc.
Yeah.
I can't think of a brand I've seen that on.
I mean, it's just, again, it's looking at the prices. Is if you're getting someone who's putting down everything in the Z3 category and it's coming up at 4 times the price, I mean, we're already seeing frames that are £5,000, and they're still not coming with that sort of quality.
No.
So it just makes no sense to me. It makes no sense to me at all. It's sort of...
No, it really, really doesn't. It's I would love to know if any brands out there are actually just ticking, you know, like ticking the option box, Z3, top quality, absolutely everything. I would love to know what that would come out as cost-wise. I mean, I've been on record as saying I'd love it if there's a frame brand that would just give me that, you know, lovely ownership feeling of owning a frame. You have a fantastic box like this Mondai style box that comes on Z3.
Kind of like that box that came with the new Rovals. That was cool.
Yeah, exactly. And then you open it up and there's a manual in there, and it's got a QC sheet that's been signed off and confirmed, and this is the size of the bottom bracket, and this is the size of this, and the brake mounts are flat, and it's been checked by, you know, senior whoever. You know, and everything's just laid out for you all neatly inside a box, and it's everything I'd love to know. I'd love to do.
Yeah. Now I have a question.
One day.
If you were going to be importing frames, so we as Mapdeck, we decide we're going to start selling frames, would you do it so that, because obviously we like quality stuff. That's what we do. Would you do it so that you just say Z3 everything, bing, 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 or you take a lower quality from the factory, but we do it in-house? We do it properly. Would you rather we take slightly cheaper from the factory and we make it what it wants to be, or would you take the 4 times the price from the factory and trust the factory to do a good job of it?
That's such an interesting question, and I would love to sit here and say I would love to import a frame one day that was just the best it can possibly be. I fear that the import duties would make it completely you couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I think if you were to import a ready-to-retail, fully painted, fully prepared frame, the import duties on that would probably make it, you know, undoable. And that's where I think this is all coming into, because you'll be sitting there thinking, right, I can't do that because I'm going to get smacked with import duties. So what can I do? Well, if I bring it in raw, but then I've got my mate down the road who does painting auto body repairs, he's going to paint up some frames for me. And then I think I've got my own QC guys inside. I think that's where we've got into this pickle. And that system has just fallen down. And I think it'd be really tough. I would love to go, oh yeah, do you know what? I found this fantastic factory and it's going to be like this. And, you know, even do what a lot of brands do and send someone out to the factory, you know, almost permanently, and say, keep an eye on the quality as well, so you can be reassured of it. I just think, you would be absolutely tied up in, you know, in taxes and imports and stuff like that. You would just make it really, couldn't do it. I can't think of the right word, can you tell? So yeah, this is dead interesting. If you want to see this for yourself, we are not going to publish it here. You should definitely head over to Hambini's Patreon, or look out for the Hambini channel. I think he's going to be doing lots more stuff in depth. This is just like our opinion of what we see, because I think we definitely see a hell of a lot more bikes than someone like Hambini would, and probably deal with the problems an awful lot more, not just in terms of bottom brackets. So I hope that was useful. Again, get down in the comments and let us know. Moving on then, deep breath. So we had a visit from Campagnolo the other day. and they showed us the new Super Record group set and said, would you like one? Would you like to buy one at a reduced rate to test on the site?
Yeah.
And we were like, okay, let's show me the pictures and let's have a look. And I was like, I think we're all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Campag, it just doesn't make sense to me. I'm sure we're going to get into it, but I know there's the purists that love their Campag and stuff like that, but it's not that anymore. And it just doesn't make sense to me.
I think Campagnolo have really, really wound themselves in knots with this. You see, Record always used to be the top of the range. It was the Dura-Race. And then they made a special edition once with lots of titanium hardware that they called Super Record.
And it was sick.
And it was fantastic. But then they've now set a new standard. So whenever you launch a new thing, you can't come back in as Record because there used to be a Super Record. And if you want the best of the best, because you're just the type of person that I want the best of the best, then you will want Super Record.
Yeah.
So the fact that they brought out a Super Record S, that doesn't help that situation.
What do you think the S stands for? Shit Super Record.
Well, that's going to be the joke, isn't it?
Yeah.
Amongst the Monaco elite,
yeah,
that is going to be the joke. It is going to be, because let's face it, you'd only buy Super Record because it's the best thing, most expensive. And the fact that they made a matte black one with an S on it, and all they've essentially done is remove the titanium hardware and replaced it with steel.
Yeah.
And it's made virtually no difference to the weight.
Yeah, basically.
But it has made almost £1,000 difference to the price. It's baffling. It seems so, I don't know what they're doing, whether they're just going, do you know what? The entry mid-market is just not where we are. We're all about the absolute very, very small volume, top of the market. Maybe that is their business strategy. And then I wish they just called it Super Record, Super Record Black.
Yeah.
And then therefore you've got the Super Record with the red decals and Super Record with the black decals, and then just lower the price slightly of the Super Record. I mean, dead easy.
It'd make a bit more sense, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But I mean, because if you look at the price, also the pricing structure then makes no sense either, because you've got Super Record, the big dog Super Record with the red decals and all the nice bits and pieces, and that is £4,500 for a group set. And how much does it weigh? 2,520 grams.
Yeah.
Excluding bottom bracket.
And power meter. So this is why we've got my little drug dealing scales here. It's not for drug dealing actually, it's just for measuring diff fluid on RC cars, but that's another video. But so we weighed it and it's 60 grams for a bottom bracket.
Yeah.
Which makes the Super Record Wireless S another 50 grams heavier essentially, isn't it? Because they were very interestingly excluded the bottom bracket from the Super Record, but included a bottom bracket with the Super Record S.
Just to make it look like a little bit more, a little bit worse.
Yeah, it's removing that titanium hardware, because there's so little amount of titanium actually in it.
It's probably an axle for the
an
cranks.
axle, a couple of pivots on the rear, but they're so small that they're not going to make a big difference to the actual weight and stuff. So, interesting.
But for me, I mean, I know there's Campag fans. I know there's people that love Campag, but on the new wireless stuff, there's no thumb shifter, which is obviously a big part of Campag's thing.
Yeah.
It's not rim brake anymore, which again, big part of the Campag market. It doesn't make sense to me, because even on this slightly cheaper one, £3,500, that's £1,000 more than what you'd pay for a Dura-Race group set, and it weighs more, right?
Yeah.
It weighs quite a bit more, like a good 100 and something grams heavier.
Yeah.
And it just
significantly, yeah.
And it doesn't work as well. You can't tell me it does. It's pain to work on.
I don't even think the ergo shifters work that well anymore. The ergo controls were meant to be ergonomic. I don't think they are.
No.
I think Dura-Race and SRAM Red are beating them hands down in the ergonomics
100%.
section.
And the big thing for me on Campag, for most people, even regardless of the price, the gear ratios are crap. You do not get the range that you get on even Shimano, which is still not industry leading like SRAM is, but you do not get, the chainring sizes are weird. And the cassette sizes, I think they only go up to a 30.
No, there are some other, they have made some improvements there, but you're right, it's still not as good as the range that you can get from SRAM Red and etc.
And if you're spending even like £3,500 on a group set is a massive amount of money.
It is
a massive amount of money. And if you're
for something that wears out,
well,
I think it is.
It doesn't. Yeah, I mean, considering you can get this something that works the same in 105 Di2, it's basically the same product. It's and you don't get it's not as functional because you don't get that sort of range that you get with the Shimano stuff. It just makes
it's not as easy to swap components out. Let's say you're going to be doing a fast flat event or something, you just want to change the chain rings out or something. It's not as adaptable as that. It's quite stuck. I think for me, it's just the looks aren't right. Like most frames now are going to like quite an edgy sort of design, and then you've kind of got this really organic, flowy design of
the group set by itself does look good.
I think it only ever looked good in a Pinarello. Think about it.
Or a Colnago.
Or potentially.
Like a C68, I think that would look nice on.
It's that sort of flowing, organic, sort of curvy designed, whereas a lot of the frames now, so like the blade, for instance, that I ride, it's all like edgy, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, and then the SRAM red is also edgy. If I put a Campagnolo Groupset onto a SRAM blade, you've got this like curvy, organic, like moulded carbon next to like the sharp edge.
There's probably a couple of people that would goon over
probably
like a Campag blade, but it's not. It just doesn't make sense to me.
I think you've got to sort of try and either make them completely contrast or you try and make them blend, don't they? And then for me, the Campagnolo just looks weird on a lot of bikes.
Well, especially, do you know what really did disappoint me actually about this as well is that they released some kind of revised Bora Ultra wheels, and they look shit. The old ones, well, not even the old ones, but the current gen ones, the glossy carbon, I think they're some of the best looking wheels about. They look awesome, and they brought out some matte ones, and they just look bad.
Yeah.
Like they look just normal, plain. They don't match the group set. I just don't get it.
Yeah, Campy really hasn't done a good thing to matte black. They were fantastic with gloss black, with all those swirls and stuff and the detailing. I feel like it's RRP, RIP, rest in peace. Campagnolo is coming fairly soon, doesn't it? I can't see this is sustainable.
I do hope they sort themselves out because it's good. It's always good to have more players in the market because it drives innovation. And it keeps prices low, or well, I say low, but it can keep prices lower, and it creates more competition. So I do hope that they sort themselves out and start making some good stuff again.
But I don't think Shimano or SRAM looked at that release and went, "Oh my God, we've got to up our game."
No, not at all.
They probably looked at it and was like, "I think we're all right, guys."
Yeah.
Moving swiftly on, Leo Wilcox, 102 days around the world.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. So Jenny Graham. Obviously just very local to us from Scottish Rider, 126 days. So that's a huge
What's that, three weeks?
Yeah.
I think that's now more time off the previous record than she is far away from the men's record. Because I think Mark Beaumont was like 81 days or something.
Yeah.
So she's now closer to the men's record than she is to any other woman. That's pretty mental, isn't it?
Absolutely incredible. And it's not even just the riding and the fitness time for me. When you really think about that, the logistics and the ferries and the just... maintaining your bike, all the time that you end up stopping to like fix a bike or repair something or get to like just the amount of planning, it's just incredible.
And if anyone is interested in that, I'd thoroughly recommend watching I think it's the 2019 Tour Divide on YouTube with Leo Wilcox. I think it's on the Pearl Izumi channel. That is a fantastic video. That's where I first learned about her. And it is really, really interesting.
Such a talented rider, and so good to see that get the record. And then finishing up this podcast, we've got a couple of leaks. So last week we were bitching and whining about the lack of entry level and mid-level group sets. We're stuck at 105. And quite a lot of people in the comments actually still think that 105 is entry level. And I still think that
I would disagree.
105 is mid-tier, almost top tier.
I would
it's the top tier group set.
I would disagree. I think it's in my head, there is virtually no performance difference in terms of shifting quality and braking quality between 105 and Dura Ace.
Yeah, if you could ride blindfolded, I think you would probably struggle to tell
because
the difference.
Even now, the levers feel the same, the shifting feels the same. It's just like a couple of 100 grams, and that's about it. They even look the same now with the black, the gloss black.
Yeah, they look very, very similar. That's for sure. So we're really talking about replacing Claris, Tiagra, Sora, Tawny, even. These are, and we were trying to put another video together at some point, but what we define as entry level, and entry level doesn't necessarily mean cheap. I think entry level to me is when someone joins the sport, not buys a bike and commutes to work or something. For me, is when someone buys a bike to enter the sport.
Yeah, go on club rides, go out with their mates, go to the cafe, all that sort of stuff.
And how that entry level might work might be your workplace might be organising a London to Brighton charity event or something like that, or that's how you might enter the sport, and you might be looking for your first bike that is usable in that sort of a situation. You mentioned London to Paris charity ride, something like that.
Yeah.
And that for me is what I'd consider the entry point. And then if you get the bug, you upgrade. And I think the other important thing with the entry level is you need to have an upgrade path, because I think I need to start somewhere. But as things wear out, if I really get into it, I want to get a better thing and a lighter thing.
So that's part of the fun of the sport, isn't it? Is the more you get into it, the further you kind of push all your upgrades, and you get into new things. You watch the reviews, and it keeps you in it, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what's really, really lacking at the moment, because they have neglected it. The jump, you can't just go from your Claris equipped bike and start upgrading bits, because you have to strip almost everything off and start again with a whole new group set.
Well, I do think there is definitely a case for upgrading everything at once, because it kind of, I quite like the big jump is like pretty cool. Like if you go from, like, for example, my friend Dan, who we built the Propel for, he went from an old TCR with mechanical SRAM on it, and then he's just moved up to a new Propel, 50mm carbon wheels, 105 Di2, and he's just been absolutely rapid on it, because you've upgraded everything at once, and it makes a really big difference.
New bike day wattage.
Yeah. So
it's a real thing.
Yeah, I think it is. But there's just like, there's sort of swings and roundabouts to it, isn't there? But you do want that path, because at the minute you're kind of just boxed in, aren't you? But Cube helped us out a little bit, didn't they?
Cube, apparently they've leaked the new road or gravel. I haven't seen a 2x version of it yet.
I've only seen the 1x pictures so far.
Which, to be fair, even if Q's came out as a 1x, wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing.
No, I would like the option though. And we do know Shimano, they like a 2x, don't they?
They do.
So I'd be surprised if it was 1x only, because they are...
I think in another podcast I could make a compelling case for an entry-level bike only being 1x.
Yeah, yeah, I could see that. Especially, I mean, with modern gear ratios, it does make sense, doesn't it? Because it basically looked like a toned-down GRX, didn't it?
Yeah.
It looked like a toned-down GRX with, I would imagine heavier components. I would probably hope 11 speed rather than 12 for a little bit more longevity. Yep.
So let's watch the space. We haven't seen any information about it. We sort of reached out to Shimano. Our contacts, they're like, don't know anything about it.
Q's never heard of it.
Yeah. And also, Pink Bike have just released some spy shots of SRAM T-Type mechanical. So T-Type, if you don't know, is the rear derailleur that mounts directly onto the frame. They call it transmission.
Yeah.
They only do that in electronic right now. The pictures look very early prototype.
Yeah, they do look prototypey.
They don't look like the Valtteri Bottas leak.
Yeah, the 13 speed.
No,
that
would look like pretty much ready to go. The one that's on there looks like very early prototype, doesn't it? So I'm not going to get excited about that just yet, but it would be nice, wouldn't it, if SRAM at least gave us something in mechanical for those people that's like endurance ride and fixing things in the field. And
no, I agree. I like mechanical for off-road stuff. I think I'm pretty much all in on electronic for road, because it's just, if you've got the money, I don't see why not. But for me, off-road, I am going to crash and I'm going to break stuff. And so the mechanical makes sense.
One more point, things just rust and just get clogged up and stuff, don't they?
Yeah.
And like things, just water will find its way everywhere.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
That's the one thing about riding off-road. You
go through a river and all that sort of stuff. But I think a big thing for me as well is that if they're really doubling down on T-Type, we're going to start seeing UDH on more and more and more stuff, which I quite like, to be honest, because I think if it gets rid of the whole derailleur hanger compatibility, and it makes more strength and better frames, and there's less kind of variation, I think that's a win for the customer, isn't it?
It is, actually. That's a top bit of buying advice to end this podcast on, is if you're in the market right now for a new gravel, touring, long distance, mountain, whatever sort of bike, anything other than an absolute top end of the line road, look for a UDH compatible frame.
Yeah, I think it makes sense.
I think we'll be seeing more and more. If you're thinking about buying a frame that will last you a decade, UDH has got to be on that frame. It's definitely what we'll be judging it by. If it's got a UDH, fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, UDH, if you don't know, is the universal derailleur hanger made by SRAM. It's actually a plastic component, but you can get aluminium ones and all sorts as well. But it's actually a very good rigid design. I really like it. And in fact, a universal derailleur hanger.
It would make me so happy if everyone just said, we're just going to have the same design, and then you can bolt stuff direct. Oh, it'd be so good.
I do feel sorry for gearmechhanger.com though.
Yeah.
It could be the end of their business model if we all did that.
Their website is mint as well.
Yeah, it's a good website. If you ever need a derailleur hanger, gearmechhanger.com.
Not sponsored.
Yeah. Anyway, On that, I'm going to end the podcast. You might wonder why these are here, because we've got a video coming out where I do sort of an analysis of the Garmin, the Wahoo and the Hammerhead, give you sort of my thoughts and opinions. That should be out sometime over the next week. So yeah, go check that out on the main channel. Thanks, Jake.
See you later.